Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's weekly workshop on virtual interview prep. I'm Emma Rauschkald, the Director of Marketing here at 24/7. And for those of you who aren't as familiar, 24/7 is a recruitment agency, and we help marketing, creative, and tech candidates get matched to freelance and full-time job opportunities. And we actually launched the weekly workshop a few months ago as a way to really connect with our talent community during these uncertain times. And we've seen companies completely upend their hiring and interview processes over the last few months. So we're eager to be able to be here with you today to go over best practices, but also answer any questions that you have about how to interview virtually. And before we jump in, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. So we have everyone muted for the presentation. We will be doing Q&A at the end, and we received a number of excellent questions during the registration process. But if you do have questions that come up during the presentation, please submit them through the chat function, and we'll be sure to get to them time permitting. And after the workshop is over, we will be sharing a copy of the presentation deck as well as a recording of the workshop. So be on the lookout for that. And with that, I am very excited to introduce my guest today, Rachel Penicia. She is a senior account manager at 24/7. She's been here for over 4 years, and she's really an expert in this space and in coaching candidates on how to interview. So with that, Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. This is my first workshop working with Emma. We're very excited for all of the tools and different strategies that we're able to present you guys virtually. This is kind of our new normal for the foreseeable future. So definitely excited to help answer any questions that you guys might have. Like Emma said, I've been with the company going on almost 5 years now, so definitely happy to help answer any questions, as well as my personal experience just from being in various industries. So ready to roll. Okay, so with video interviews with interviews in general happening virtually, we wanted to just help you guys really, improve. In-person interviewing, right, was the old normal. Now here we are with videos. So you want to treat the video interview just like an in-person interview. So you want to prepare, you want to dress the part, look professional, make sure that the background is appropriate, make sure your service is good, testing out, maybe test with a friend before. So all the same tips and tricks as you would for an in-person interview. It's just now it's going to be more virtual. Tech is unpredictable, so I'm sure there will be some hiccups, but I think it allows candidates to give clients an example of the way that they can be adaptable and kind of roll with the punches, right? Because if you can roll with the punches when it comes to tech, you can pretty much roll with the punches with anything, in my opinion. Perfect. So video interview best practices. We kind of touched on this in the last slide, but definitely doing your research on the company, prepping with the job description, relating any sort of relations between your resume and the job description. Again, we can't explain it enough or stress it enough. Test your tech. Emma and I had a little tech issue before this, so it happens to everybody. Obviously, get dressed from top to bottom. I don't know if anybody saw the news broadcast where the guy was only dressed on the top and you could see with his bottom. So I always say, even if it's just a pair of leggings, just put them on. And find the right setting. Again, you want to have the appropriate backdrop. Make sure there's nobody like running around in the background. It's silent, you have good service, and of course, be on time. I always say, even just sitting in front of your computer like 5 to 10 minutes before, just with the link up, ready to click it, you're ready to go.
Yeah, and I think with that too, even giving yourself a little extra time, as Rachel and I just saw, ensures that if you do have any issues, you can correct them and you can have time to just sit and feel totally ready to go.
Absolutely. Just like you would be a little bit ahead of time for an in-person interview, with tech is the new subway. The subways in New York City are so unpredictable, so tech can be just as unpredictable. So you want to make sure you're ahead of schedule to, troubleshoot any sort of delays. But in terms of example of interview questions, again, you want to be prepared to speak to your current status. I know with everything going on, a lot of people's statuses are varying, whether you're furloughed, have unfortunately been laid off due to COVID, or you are just simply looking for a new opportunity. I think that COVID did spread, showed a lot of true colors with some companies. So, maybe that's why you want to start looking for a new role, and that's okay. So just be truthful in terms of your current status. The majority is unfortunately, let go or furloughed. So that is totally fine. Nothing to be self-conscious about. But yeah, so just be honest. And then why you think you would be a good fit for this role. I think preparation is key. Again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I think that it really is the importance of those points. So taking the time to prepare, having situational examples, maybe how you, your ROI for the company on an initiative that you implemented, and any sort of specific relations between the job description and your resume. So really being able to extract those points that are specific to the role. And then strengths and weaknesses, definitely want to harp on the strengths, weaknesses as well. We all have them. We are human. It's fine. And I think that it speaks more to candidacy when you are able to identify them and explain how you kind of overcome them in a job, in your personal life, or whatever the case may be. And are you comfortable working remotely? I mean, like I said in the beginning, this is the new normal, right? Virtual working remotely for many of us, until question mark, no one really knows when. So I think being able to really speak to communication is key right now, because you're not able to just go over to somebody's desk or see if somebody is at their desk. So definitely communication, ability to work independently is really important, and ability to, be able to work independently and problem solve. So with that, being able to problem solve on your own, I think, again, the communication is key, but sometimes we all have a job to do, including our managers who might be answering questions for us. So, being able to go to your manager and say, hey, I have this question. I tried X, Y, and Z. I still can't get it. What do you suggest I do? And I think that this is particularly important for once you do start a new job. And if you are starting a new job remotely, it really helps show your manager, even though they can't see in person what you're doing, you're explaining, hey, I tried this already, it didn't work. Can you help me out?
Yeah, I feel like you just touched on transparency, which is so key when we're all working from home and we're all separated. And those soft skills you mentioned too, which we can get more into later, are increasingly important in this, digital first world.
Absolutely. All right, so how to present your resume in an interview. I will be honest with everybody. Some people don't mind it, but one of my personal pet peeves when interviewing candidates is when they have their resume in front of them. Personally, I think that it's your experience. You are the person that did the job. You should be able to speak confidently about the position that you held, without having to reference your resume. Luckily, with virtual interviews, you could have your resume off to the side here and no one could really know that you're referencing your resume. So as it says here, start whichever, personally, I think you could start with your most recent experience and work backwards, or you could start with your least recent and work the other way. Either way, as long as it's consistent, I think is key. You don't want to be jumping all over and saying, well, then I did this here. Oh, but I forgot about this. You really want to, that's a way to illustrate your organizational skills, is being able to articulate yourself in an organized manner. And again, be sure to list specific examples. Numerical data is always a benefit, always a plus. Nobody can argue with numbers. So if you're able to say, even with, social media, for example, if you're in the social media industry and you're looking for a social media role, you can say, I increased my company's Instagram followers by 85%. That way you're not getting into the nitty gritty of exactly how many followers, but more so adding a percentage to it can can articulate your analytical skills as well. Cause and effect. So what you contributed to the company, if there was a process that you implemented or something that kind of streamlined or better organized any sort of process or efficiencies in the company, definitely something to notate, because it shows that you can not only ideate efficiencies, but also execute them, and then maybe how it was implemented into the company, how many people utilize the new process. And if you save the company money, that's a bonus, right? Now more than ever, everybody wants to save money. So if your process helped the company save money, that's definitely something to mention as well. And then moving from one employer to the next, I think at the end of the day, it all goes back to that honesty factor and making sure that you are leaving any sort of position on a positive note. I think I come personally from the fashion industry, which is incredibly small. But I think all industries are really small. And even though New York City is massive, LA is massive, they're small. A lot of people know one another through college, other companies. So I think not burning bridges is really important. And then that will make this point a bit easier, right? To explain why you moved from one company to the next in case they want to fact check you. So that's, something to keep in mind. They might professionally fact check you through references, or they might know somebody at that company that they can reach out to. So just something to keep in mind. And then share team relationships. I think that working cross-functionally is something that's really important to all companies. Everybody has organizational charts varying in sizes, especially now. So I think being able to give specific examples of various cross-functional partners that you've worked with and how you've collaborated together is really important. And you never know, maybe they could utilize a partner that you have, or someone, you could be working with that person again one day. You could give a referral. 24/7 offers referral bonuses, so companies do.
Nice little plug there. I think we've also seen, so many roles be consolidated. So exactly to your point, like being able to work with different departments, different teams is only going to make you more successful as we kind of look to what's next.
Okay, the elevator pitch. So I think this kind of ties back to confidently being able to explain yourself, your background, and your experiences. So things to include in your personal pitch, your current role or the role that you're aspiring to have, or even the industry that you're currently in, or an industry maybe that you're looking to get into, how many years you've done that specific role or have been in that specific career, your experience, your expertise in the industry. So like, why you could be a marketing person, maybe you specialize in social media, maybe you specialize in innovation, and then any applicable skills. And I think that relates to computer programs as well. Nothing speaks more to a candidate who's great for a job when they've already worked in the programs that the company has, because that's less training for them to do, So not that I'm sure they'd be happy to train everybody, but I think it does make it a little bit more seamless when you do have the appropriate computer programs when moving to your next position. But yeah, you're speaking about yourself, so just do it with confidence. Like, People are going to make people want to invest in you, invest their time in you, invest their money in you, and really speak passionately about what you believe in, professionally and personally, I think, as long as it's appropriate to either your skill set or the company that you're interviewing with or the person that you're speaking to. I think that it will help resonate and make the person want to talk to you further.
Yeah, and I feel like with the elevator pitch, that's a great thing to practice, like 5 minutes in the bathroom, you're getting ready one day, because it can feel kind of uncomfortable to be pitching yourself. So just practice going through these bullet points, I think, is helpful, but just getting more comfortable with the language and how you talk about yourself is going to make it so that if you get a call for an interview tomorrow, like you're ready to go.
Absolutely. And it can be short, it'll hopefully become conversational. So you just want to make sure that you're touching on the most important points as we have illustrated here in the beginning. And then you hope from there that it becomes more conversational based on, different skill sets that you might have, or maybe the interests that you mentioned.
Exactly.
Oh, thank you notes. So thank you notes are very important. I've actually received a couple physical thank you notes in my way, and it was very heartwarming. While I think they're very special and a huge differentiator, I think that email thank you notes are just as great. You want to thank this person for their time. You also want to follow up with them. You don't know how many interviews they had that day, and you really want, say you're the first interview 9 a.m. and they have 7 interviews that day. By the time they get to their 7th person, they, I don't want to say forgot about you, but I think that it's a very over day. So to write a thank you note, I think just shows professionalism. It shows that you're appreciative, and it shows that you really want the job and you really want to join that team, especially if you had a connection with that person. I think it's really nice. And so with that, you want to make sure that you get the contact information, whether it be a card or even like an email address that you can get off of the website or LinkedIn. Proofread, proofread, proofread. There is spell check in Word. Please use it. Because again, I think it's through organization. It shows that you're detail oriented. So I think that it's very important. And within 24 hours, it doesn't have to be immediately after you interview, maybe that evening, so that they get it in the morning when especially if they had 7 interviews that day, I'm sure they're going to reassess in the morning. So something definitely to make sure that you do within 24 hours, but also the length is something that I wanted to mention as well. So I think that there's a nice medium between a 1-sentence thank you note and a 3-paragraph thank you note. I think you want to make sure that the person gets through the entire email, letter, whatever it is. So I mean, clear, concise, to the point, thank you. Just great. Oh yeah, so we just had somebody chime in, say in Gmail you can schedule your emails to send out at a certain time. Yeah, that's a great input.
Yeah, awesome idea.
Yeah, so if you have something going on maybe that evening and you won't be able to get it out, or whatever the case may be, that's a great tip. Thank you.
I think too, to your point about being concise, like also referencing something specific that you talked about in the interview, exactly to Rachel's point, like if a hiring manager is meeting with multiple candidates in a day, sending something in your thank you note that reminds them of what you talked about specifically in your interview also just shows that you really are interested in the job and comes back to that connection of why you might be the right fit.
And I think it also shows that you were, interviews can be very overwhelming. And I think that it shows that, you were paying attention and you really had a great connection with that person. So definitely a great tip as well as to mention something that you might have talked about during the interview.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you already touched on this, coming back to like, you never know who you're going to run into again in the future. But even if you're not interested in a job, still send a thank you note. It's just common courtesy, and you never know when something might come back around.
There was a time where I was like doing connections and networking, and I would get coffee with people just when I made a bit of a career switch from the merchandising buying world to obviously recruiting and in the marketing space. And there was a point in time where I was getting coffee with any connection that I could. And I was even sending thank you notes to those people. So I think that people really appreciate being appreciated. So something just to keep in mind.
Yeah, and even though we're not getting physical coffee with people right now, you could do a virtual coffee date. I think that's also a great idea. And again, follow up with a thank you note. Amazing. So Rachel, thank you. That was some really great insights to kick us off. And now we already have a couple of questions coming in through the chat, as well as some that we got through registration. So let's just jump right in. So first question is, when working with a recruiter and prior to an interview, what questions can I ask my recruiter to learn more about an interview that may help during the interview process?
Yeah, great question. So the luxury of working with an agency and working with a recruiter is that that recruiter most likely already has a relationship with that hiring manager or already has a relationship with that company. We pride ourselves, again, in more physical times, I guess you could say, going to visit offices and visiting our hiring managers in person so that we can speak truly to them and the company. So really, I would lean on your account managers or your recruiters for like soft skills. So like, what does this person really look for in a candidate? Again, personally and professionally. How are they in terms of how they like to work, or maybe some personal hobbies that they might have that you could maybe like mention. Like we're here to kind of give you that like inside scoop, things that you might not be able to find via LinkedIn when you're researching the hiring manager, or you might not be able to find via the website of the company.
Yeah, that's definitely a nice value add. And even if you're interviewing not through an agency, I think to Rachel's point, like researching the company website, finding your interviewer on LinkedIn, like doing some of that digging ahead of time just will ease your nerves and also make you feel more prepared.
Yeah, I remember one of the first interviews I had at a college, person that I was interviewing with was actually from a college in my home. She went to college in my hometown. So it was just a nice like icebreaker, more conversational way to start the interview.
Yeah, such a great idea. So this next question is, after being asked a situational question by an interviewer, roughly how long should you spend on a response? Like how long is too long to be talking about your experience?
I always say that the moment, and I'm guilty of this myself, as I can probably tell, the moment that you feel like you're rambling, you probably are. So I think that really keeping it's hard to give a time frame because you're probably, I mean, I hope you're not like looking down at your watch to make sure that you're staying within a certain time frame, but I think it's really important to have, you know, what was the problem, how you solved it, and how it attributed to the company. Really just like those 3 steps, and touching maybe like 1 to 3 sentences of touching each of those steps is the most important.
Yeah, that's good. It's like you want to share your experience and specific examples, but also be concise at the same time. So let's see. Do you recommend asking for feedback if you don't move on to the next round or get the job?
Absolutely. I mean, I personally ask for feedback for all of my candidates. Not only does it help me do my job better, but I also think it's really constructive and helpful for my candidates. And sometimes the feedback isn't, it's always meant to be constructive. So even if it's not necessarily as simple as, you know, we found somebody who had this computer program and he or she didn't have that. It might be something else. And I think as long as you're taking it in a constructive manner, I think it could be really helpful and beneficial for you as you continue your interview process. But I absolutely think it's worth an ask. coming from personal experience, again, you might not get feedback, but at least you can ask. And, you know, I think that that shows that you're really trying to grow yourself and grow, you know, professionally and as an interviewer or an interviewee.
Yeah, it never hurts to ask, and hopefully you get something that will help you in, you know, the next interview that you have.
Exactly. And every interview is an experience with that. You know, I never want, again, speaking from personal experience, I think it was my first in-person interview out of college, and it was humiliating. It was, you know, I was interviewing with the manager, and it was the dead of summer. He brought me in a room without air conditioning, shut the door. To say the least, I was profusely sweating, and that's all I could. And it went terrible. But I was like, that interview made me stronger, and now I know moving forward, you know, don't wear a long sleeve button up to an August interview.
And that's another benefit of virtual interviewing. You can just blast the air conditioning at home, so you have temperature control. But we actually didn't touch on that, and I think that's a really good point too, is taking interviews even if you're not 100% sure if you want the job, because practice is only going to make you stronger and just hone your interview skills.
Yeah, and I think it could be really beneficial to your point, you know, if you are in between whether you're interested in the role or not, you know, you always want some sort of interest because you want to be cautious of your time and the interviewer's time. But if you are kind of treading the line, I just say go for it, because at the end of the day, the more interview experience you have, the better interviewer you'll be.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. So the next question is, this is a really good one. So when researching companies, I find that sometimes they have bad reviews on Glassdoor or Indeed. Is it ever okay to ask about that in an interview, or even just asking a recruiter about it?
Yeah, my fiance always says that 9 times out of 10, if someone's leaving a review, it's going to be a negative review. So I think that that's also something to keep in mind. I don't think that it should always be that case. Like, I think that people should feel comfortable preaching positivity just as much as complaining and negativity. But it's just something to keep in mind when you are looking at those reviews. I think that it is definitely okay to mention, especially if it was a recent review. I think that reviews, maybe a negative review from 2017 might not be very relevant, because maybe it was just that specific person who worked there at that time, and maybe they've already troubleshooted the issue. But if it was something that happened a few months ago, I think that there's definitely a productive way to address it, as long as you're doing it in a professional manner and it's not coming across accusatory. I'd say you might mention it. They might not even know that that review is there, so I would also be prepared for them to be a bit surprised. But I think that if it's something that you're worried about, you should absolutely bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more in terms of just when people do leave reviews, it tends to be in the heat of the moment. But at the same time, an interview is also an opportunity for you really to get the information you need to know if this is the right job and company for you. So I do think if something's concerning, it's important to ask. But again, to Rachel's point, like in a respectful manner.
Yes, absolutely. And I say that to my candidates as well. 24/7, another plug here, also offers temp to perm opportunities. And I always say that during that time that you are temping, or during your interview process, you are just as much testing the client or the interviewer as much as they are you. You know, the interview technically goes both ways, even though it might not feel that way, but it is important to, you know, make sure that you feel comfortable if the position is going to be offered to you.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't believe it, but we're already at time. That just flew by. I know there's a few questions we didn't get to, so I promise we'll follow up with you after this, as well as share a recording of today's presentation. I did want to ask you, Rachel, before we go, do you have any favorite interview questions that you can share with the group today?
Yeah, so I would say that my go-to interview question, and this might be a good way, like a good loophole to figure out how the company culture is to ask the interviewer what their favorite and least favorite part about working with that company and working in their role is. Just as much as they want to know about your strengths and weaknesses, I think understanding the company's strengths and weaknesses is just as important. And then anything that you might want elaborated in terms of the job description, I think is really important, because again, if you are to accept this position, you want to make sure that you fully understand the ins and outs. And I know that this is something that, now more than ever, stressing to see what the company's initiatives are, where they potentially, again, all about articulating in a respectful manner, but if they do donate to any sort of causes that are important and that might be important to you, it could be an added bonus, as well as career development, which is always important. What is their different career development tracks that they offer? Do they have a training department that can help them make those necessary shifts if you wish to do so? So I know that those were kind of jumbled together because I know that we're out of time, but I just wanted to give you that I personally think are beneficial and just good questions to ask.
Yeah, I think that's extremely helpful. So again, thank you everyone for joining. A big thank you to Rachel, and we'll be following up shortly after the workshop to answer any questions that we missed.
Thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.